Last Meal Monday, where every Monday I tell you about a killer on death row and what they had as their final meal. This week we're going to talk about Stephen Morin. This is Stephen Morin, and y'all, he's actually a pretty prolific serial killer that you've probably never heard of. He was born in Rhode Island, but ultimately ended up in the 60s in Florida, where he spent time in juvenile detention centers for things like car theft and aggravated robbery. But by the 70s, he had made his way to Northern California, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area. On September 26, 1976, Stephen essayed his first victim, an unnamed 14-year-old girl that he tricked back to his apartment. He held her hostage for hours, abusing her before releasing her in a nearby local shopping center. The next victim that we know of was Sheila Griffith, a 22-year-old Las Vegas, Nevada resident. She was last seen on September 25th, 1979, leaving her job at the Silver Nugget Casino with a then unidentified man who would later turn out to be Stephen. Her body wasn't found until November 27th. His next known victim was 18-year-old Susan Belote, also a Las Vegas, Nevada resident. She went missing on January 16th, 1980. Her body was found on May 26th of that same year. On June 27, 1980, Stephen abducted his next victim, 20-year-old Cheryl Daniel. He abducted her from a Las Vegas supermarket parking lot. Unfortunately, her body was discovered on December 13, 1980. By January of 1981, police had connected Stephen to the murders of Susan Belote and Cheryl Daniel, and they issued a warrant for his arrest. Stephen's next victim, 23-year-old Sheila Whalen, was found stabbed to death on November 7, 1981, in a motel in Lakewood, Colorado. Apparently, Stephen had gone on a date with his then-girlfriend, dropped his girlfriend off, drove out, and then abducted Sheila, took her to the motel, repeatedly abused her, and then stabbed her to death. His next victim was 21-year-old Jana Bruce. He abducted her on December 2nd, 1981, essayed her, and then murdered her. Her body was discovered the next day on December 3rd. Police were able to match Stephen's fingerprints to fingerprints found in Jana's car, which was great because then they were able to issue a warrant, which ultimately led to his arrest and his conviction. Finally, this is when it just all comes to a head. December 11th, 1981. Stephen tries to carjack Carrie Scott and her friend Drew Valdez with a .38 pistol. He shot Carrie and he shoots Drew. Unfortunately, Carrie did pass away, but Drew survived. He steals their car and goes back to the motel he's staying at, the Sands Motel. But at this point, police have been notified, choppers are in the air, and an entire SWAT team has surrounded this motel. Even though SWAT had surrounded the entire motel, Stephen was able to escape through a bathroom window. But when they made entry into the motel room, there they discovered Pamela Jackson, a woman that Stephen had abducted 11 days prior. Yes, you heard that correctly. This woman survived 11 days with this man. The next day, on December 12, 1981, Stephen abducted Margaret Palm and forced her at gunpoint to drive him around the city. They ultimately ended up at a Greyhound bus station 65 miles outside of San Antonio, where Margaret bought him a ticket to Austin, Texas. As soon as she saw him off on the bus, Margaret hopped back in her car and sped off to her house. She explained exactly what happened to the FBI and the Austin Police Department, and luckily the police were waiting for Stephen when he got off the bus, and they immediately arrested him. Stephen was charged with the murder of Carrie Scott and Jana Bruce. He withdrew all of his appeals, pled guilty, and was sentenced to death. Later on, he was convicted of the murder of Cheryl Daniel before being extradited to Colorado and was charged and convicted of the murder of Sheila Whalen. I believe he was given death in both of those as well. Over the course of his entire life, though, they do believe that he killed approximately 40 young girls and women and at least 7 men. Stephen was put to death on March 13, 1985 by the lethal injection. For his final meal, he had a T-bone steak, baked potato with butter, sweet green peas, some bread rolls, banana pudding, and a cup of coffee. And that brings us to the end of